I would like to introduce our next guest. Kelly Nevins is here. She's the Executive Director of Women's Fund. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
So nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Come on in. Join us here. All right. So let me pull up my notes here. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Women's Fund of RI. And let's start off by talking about women's history. We'll start with that and talk a little bit about the impact and what you guys are doing to address gender inequity in Rhode Island.
Sure. So let me just start by talking about the mission of the Women's Fund, which is to invest in women and girls through research, advocacy, and strategic partnerships designed to eliminate gender inequity. And it's our hope that we will be able to eliminate the wage gap, that we will be able to help women be more successful with their families and in their work lives by creating more family-friendly policies that help them to do just that.
And that's really on topic right now.
Sure.
As we move forward into 2017, it's a hot topic right
Absolutely.
now is creating this gender equality, and I think there's big momentum behind it as well.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of those issues that you guys are working on. Let's start off with, you mentioned working with partners to pass laws that will help provide earned sick time.
Sure. So what we have found, we actually just released some research earlier this year. I don't know if our viewers can see this. It's the status of working women in Rhode Island. And the report examines a lot of different things that happen within the workplace and also which prevent women from getting into the workplace. We know that 36% of women in Rhode Island work part-time, and many of them work part-time not because they want to, but because there's something that's keeping them from accessing the full-time work space.
36%.
36%,
right?
It is, absolutely, especially when you consider that over 2/3 of women are the major breadwinners in their families. Either their partners, they have partners who are helping them to raise money for their families, but 23% are the sole breadwinners for their families. If you're working part-time and you're trying to family, it's a challenge. We also know that 40% of our private sector employees do not need sick time. So I know that
How much percent?
40%.
Wow, 40%.
Yes, that's right. So 40% of people, if they get sick or their kids get sick, they have a choice. They can go to work sick and possibly get lots of other people infected and not do their best on their job. They could stay home and try and get better, but they do that without pay. So 3 days without pay equals a month of grocery bills that, because they stayed home to take care of themselves or their kids. And if they don't get paid sick time, there's a chance that if they're taking time off, they're going to get fired from their job.
Yeah.
Right. So particularly, we see this for women who have 1 and 2 part-time jobs that they're trying to put together so that they can get full-time work. And now suddenly it's a real problem for them. So we are working with partners like the Working Families Party and also different legislators like our Representative Aaron Regenberg to try and get earned sick time as a benefit for all Rhode Island employees who work in the private sector.
And I mean, if your kids are sick too, what choice do you really have?
Right.
I mean, if your kid has the flu and is throwing up all day,
right,
you can't send them to daycare.
Right. Or they have a horrible choice that they stay home alone or with somebody that you wouldn't trust to be with your kids. I mean, these are all awful decisions to make. So let's help families. And let's also help people to be more successful in the work that they're doing by giving them a minimum of a couple of days a year off where they could take care of their families with pay.
And you mentioned some of the organizations that you're working with and people that you're working with to get that. What's the status on that?
So right now the bill has been introduced. We're actually doing a postcard letter writing campaign. We have these postcards in the Women's Fund office as well as with the Working Families Party and other locations throughout the state where you can write to your legislator and say, here's my story, here's why I think it's important to support this legislation. We hope that our legislators will vote this into law before the end of the year.
And it's not just for women; it's for men too.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
For people
Yes.
who want. And what's the opposition been like?
And well, there
Cost
are
businesses money.
It will cost businesses money,
Yeah.
right? There's a variety of different reasons and pushback. How are we going to pay for it? Right now, the talk is, we'll pay for it with an extra tax on income. So, we haven't figured all those things out, but the idea is we want to try and get something that, again, provides a minimum of a couple of days a year, 3 days a year, to help employees take care of themselves and their family when they're sick. I don't think it's too much to ask.
3 days sounds, I mean, if you're working, most jobs is usually 3 to 5 sick days, so.
Well, and really it's
They do provide it.
Yeah, the way that the legislation is laid out, it's actually based on how many hours that you work per year, or per month. So, it wouldn't be necessarily three days for somebody who works a tiny amount of hours.
Yeah,
it's
if you're
a
working
percentage
12
of your
hours a
time.
week or something
Right,
like that.
but it does add up over time, and we do hope that we'll get that passed.
All right, and so the next thing that you're also working on is to raise the minimum wage. So right now it's what, $9.60 an hour in Rhode Island, and
right.
Working to get that up to what is it, 10?
Well, it actually will go to $10.50 this year.
This summer, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. But continuing to raise the minimum wage so that people who work at minimum wage, who are predominantly women, can be able to take care of their families. So it's a continual fight. It's something that we'll continually work on. But there are other family-friendly legislation pieces that we're trying to work on as well. Right now there's an attack on the Affordable Care Act. And so there's concern about if that goes away, will women have access to reproductive health care services and also health insurance? So making sure that we have health insurance available for pregnant women, regardless of whether they can pay for it, is something that's really important to us, and it's something that we're working on with the March of Dimes. Making sure that women have access to make reproductive choices is important, because when women can make reproductive themselves and their families, we know that they're economically better off, and they're also more healthy. So those different pieces, we're working on that with Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, if we take away funding from Planned Parenthood, we're taking away a lot of services outside of what they're known for by the community. It's really much more than that, making sure that there's access to all different types of reproductive health care, including regular just health checkup visits. That's where a lot of women go for their service. We need to make sure that they're taken care of.
And just it's women's health overall.
It's women's health, absolutely. So, it's an interesting time to be involved in women's rights issues. We've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. And there's, concern that we're going to be taking some steps backward. So we need to entrench, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of women who take care of our families.
And you do have some highlights to talk about the status of working women report in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So, the report, some of the issues that the report really highlighted that to me are of concern. We've got a large number of our girls, particularly within our Latina community. 36% are not graduating from high school. 28% of our Asian young women are not graduating from high school. And there's concern there, because if you don't have a high school certificate, if you don't have a diploma, it's really hard to get just a basic job.
It's becoming so much more difficult just to get those entry-level jobs
Yes,
now.
absolutely. And whether your plan is to have a family or not, being able to ensure that you can work if you want to and get a good paying job with benefits, you need to have at least that baseline. We would love to, talk with organizations and groups that are helping young women to succeed in school. And then beyond that, how can we get them on the entry-level career track, maybe through just getting a certificate, some basic training in labs or in computer technology. So that they don't have to go to college, but if they get some basic training in some of the more technology related stuff that we're doing these days, that will set them up for future success.
STEM, get their GED, anything along those lines?
Sure. I mean, the higher that you go up on the spectrum, the more money that, in terms of education, the more money you're going to make. In fact, we, in addition to the report, we have this great little infographic, and these are on our website at www.wfri.org/research. You'll see here that somebody who has less than a high school diploma, a girl is making just $480 a week, versus somebody who graduated from high school who's making $642 a week, versus somebody who's completed college who's making $1,000 a week. That's starting entry level. Now, of course, there's still the gender wage gap issue. In Rhode Island, women are making 88 cents on the dollar compared to men, but that's all women. When you look at just women of color, African American women are just making 71 cents on the dollar, and it's even less for our Latina friends. So really working to find ways to increase income for these different parts of our community is really important.
So what would you like to see be done in Rhode Island? What do you think is feasible to be done within the next year or 5 years?
Sure. So we're working at a number of different angles. We have a new workshop series coming out where, number one, we're helping women to advocate for their net worth. So really understanding what they're worth compared to their male colleagues and being able to negotiate for that will be something that we'll be focusing on later in the year. We know that when we have more women in leadership, that things get better for women in general. So helping women to run for office is something that we'll be looking at and possibly running a workshop on. We are partnering up with an initiative called Raising Our Impact, where we're working to get more women in corporate C-suites and on corporate boards. Again, so that they have more presence at the table when decisions are being
literally
made. Yes, literally, right, exactly. I mean, the one bright light that we have in Rhode Island is that we have 31% of our legislators are female. And that's considered a tipping point. When you get over 30%, it means that in general, things tend to get better for women. We need to see more women in leadership in our workplaces. They need to be in, the senior leadership positions and on corporate boards. We also need to make sure that women at the lower end are getting into the types of career paths that will help them to succeed later on in life.
And be able to access those higher paying jobs, be able to access those higher positions.
Absolutely.
To be able to continue work.
Yes, absolutely.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so that was Kelly Nevins. She's the Executive Director of Women's Fund RI, and you do, but briefly before we go, you do have a couple of events coming up.
Yeah.
March 16th is one of them, or March 10th is one of them, and then March 16th.
Yes.
So tell me briefly just about those before we go.
So we partner annually with Senator Jack Reed on an event in celebration of National Women's History Month. On March 10th from 1 to 2:30 at the Providence Public Library, we have a great panel of speakers who are going to be talking about some of the innovative opportunities for women to engage in our community. And that includes Tasia Altero, who is with the Commission on Women and Girls and also Advancing Women's Excellence. It includes Sierra Barter from the Lady Project, Jen Silbert from Opportunities at Work, and then Maureen Martin from the AFL-CIO. It's going to be a great panel discussion. It's free. If you go to the Women's Fund website, wfri.org, click on our events calendar, you can get some more information about that event. And then on March 16th, we're going to be doing a deep dive into this research. And from there, we're going to have host tabletop discussions about, okay, what are the issues that are brought up by this report? How should the community respond? And how should the Women's Fund respond? And again, it's a free event. We invite anybody who's interested in this data to come and talk with us and see if we can come up with some great ways to solve some of the issues that are brought up.
And move forward and take action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. And look forward to finding out more what you find out and plans moving forward.
Thank you.
It sounds like you have a lot of work ahead of you.
Thanks so much.